What is a public figure or artist who has done horrible things but that people continue to follow or listen? Chris Brown. Drake. He's a predator, a creep, but people don't mind apparently. Jerry Lee Lewis was married 7 times, and a couple overlapped. The third marriage, at age 22, was to his first cousin once removed who was 13 at the time. She had a son at 14 that died in a pool accident at age 3. She divorced Jerry at age 19 for adultery and abuse, physical and mental. His fourth marriage ended, during a divorce, with his wife drowning in a pool, which I find suspicious. His fifth marriage ended with his wife having a drug overdose, and unproven allegations of abuse and a theory he may have killed her. Aside from drunk driving, tax evasion, and the one time Elvis had him arrested when Jerry crashed a car, drunk, into his gate waving a pistol, he also did some charming things like suing his own kids and accidentally shooting his bassist in the gut. Caitlyn Jenner's terrible driving hasn't seen much backlash. Well, at my kids' school the cult of Andrew Tate seems to be quite a thing. And we are in the UK. Boy George drugged and handcuffed Auden Carlson to his radiator, battered and sexually assaulted him. He served a 4-month sentence and now he's on all sorts of reality shows and Noon seems to remember what a monster he is. In my opinion he should never be allowed on television or to realize music again. David Eddings and his wife Lee, authors who wrote several best-selling fantasy series. They're pretty niche compared to everything else in this post, but worth mentioning as they had a horrible child abuse conviction prior to writing books. Starting in the 80s they authored a few popular series of what would now be called YA fantasy, but prior to that they were both found guilty of severe physical abuse of their adopted son and had both their children. They'd also adopted a baby girl, separately, taken from them by the state. David actually wrote his first novel High Hunt while in prison. He had been a professor at a local college at the time of their arrest. Their child abuse was unconscionable. They kept a 4-year-old boy locked in the dark in an improvised cage under their basement stairs. His cage featured a crude bed with restraining straps, a toilet made out of a bucket, and tools used to harm him like a large needle and a paddle or strap that they beat him with. They were arrested, found guilty, and each served short prison terms. After prison David and Lee went on to write several best-selling series of fantasy novels, including the Belgariad, the Malloreon, the Elenium, the Dreamers, and the Tamuli. David died in 2009, and most of their fans don't seem to know anything about their history of child abuse. Jared Leto. Nicki Minaj. A continual supporter of the men in her life that rape children. Deshaun Watson, quarterback for the Cleveland Browns, was sued by 24 women for sexual assault last year. He paid 23 of them off to settle the suits. Browns, knowing this information, gave him the largest contract in NFL history. LOL. LeBron has been vocal about his support for Deshaun and has chosen to make the Cleveland Browns his NFL team. Edit. He was originally a Cowboys fan but decided to find a new team at the beginning of the season because he was unhappy with how Dallas handled kneeling for the anthem and Jerry Jones. Fair. But why not choose any of the New York teams that didn't recently sign the largest known predator in the league? Or hell, the other Ohio team. https://www.sbnation.com/amp/NFL/2022368188/Deshaun-Watson-sexual-allegations- explained. LeBron has also been a supporter of Travis Scott. After Astro World hiring him to perform at parties as recently as 4 months ago. https://amp.tmz.com/2022/10/Lebron-James-Rages-Scott-Bronny-birthday-party. George Santos hasn't spoken a single word of truth and he's still a member of Congress. She's no longer alive, but Coco Chanel is still seen by many as a cultural and fashion icon, but my gosh was she a nasty piece of work. During her life she sold her failing business to the Jewish Wertheimer family, who built it into a successful and profitable perfume house. She then turned them into the Nazis and had their assets seized and transferred back to her as a pure Aryan, achieving sole ownership of the company. She worked with and for Nazi intelligence throughout World War II and had a hand in several anti-Jewish and other intelligence operations. When the Nazis fell, she gave free perfume to GIs to bribe her way out of immediate incarceration, fleeing to Switzerland. She ultimately escaped punishment after the war as Winston Churchill directly intervened on her behalf. This was allegedly due to blackmail, as she had knowledge about high-level politicians/members of the royal family and their close Nazi connections that would have been disastrous were it be made public. She died an old and very rich lady revered by many, with the full details of her horrible past only really coming to light after she died. Edit. People have pointed out that the Wertheimers managed to cleverly stop her gaining full control during the war and had their ownership returned afterwards. Thanks for the correction, folks. Chris Brown, Kanye, and Travis Scott are still huge in the music world. It's like nobody cares. Edit. Forgot Cardi B. She won a Grammy the year she admitted to drugging and robbing men after seducing them. Most of those who sprang to mind have been mentioned, but how about Prosperity Church Creedence/Faith Healing con artists like Joel Osteen or Peter Popoff? I cannot believe that they have followers still, it's unfathomable. Edit. Wow, this blew up. I wanna say that I just finished reading all the responses, and thank people for mentioning other examples like Kenneth Copeland, Benny Hinn, John Hagee, Jimmy Swaggart, Ted Haggard, Brian Tamaki, Creflo Dollar, the family of Oral Roberts, and their counterparts in other places in the world such as Africa, etc., and say that I'm very sorry for those of you in the comments that had to deal with family members and friends falling victim to these leeches in human skin. Dr. Phil. Let me just tell you that the weatherman from my hometown has more than a dozen aggravated assault charges from beating his wife and is still worshipped. I hate the man and all that he stands for. Anyone in the Church of Scientology. Gloria Trevi. I doubt any Americans will know her, but she's a Mexican singer who's been popular since the 90s. During the 90s she and her husband, Sergio Andrade, were the head of a sex/human trafficking ring of underage girls. Basically, she would groom young girls and promise them a career in music. However, once they accepted, she would basically kidnap them by kidnapping them and would force them to have sex with her clients and husband. Because the money and power she and her husband had, they were let go by the Mexican's justice system. Her husband was indeed set guilty for rape, kidnapping, and sex trafficking but only sentenced to 1 year in jail. She, on the other hand, was never convicted to any charges or sentence. She is still very famous in Mexico and a lot of people, especially Gen X and older millennials, would still listen to her songs and go to her concerts. Even the media in Mexico would ignore all her past and rarely mentions that she was a leader of a sex trafficking ring. Edit. Oh wow, I wasn't expecting this comment to get updated so much. Thank you for the award and for adding very interesting info I didn't even know about this case. Some quick notes. I am sorry for the grammar mistakes. English is not my first language and I tend to make these often. For all of those who were wondering what kipping mean, I was trying to say keeping. Meaning that Gloria Trevi would not let the girls escape from one of her houses. Thank you for being patient with me on that. Thank you so much for adding very interesting information I didn't know. For example, I wasn't unaware of her arrest and jail time in Brazil, the mysterious death of one of her kids, and the birth of one of her kids when she was in jail in Brazil. Ezra Miller should probably be in jail. Roman Polanski.